some pretty horrible stuff happens, but it's also very sexy and smutty. Hello and welcome back to Slaggy Book Club, the book club that is everything but a book club. I'm Cameron, and in today's episode, I am back with part 2 of my top 10 fiction reads of 2024. Thank you so much for all the love on part 1. If you haven't watched it already, go and check that video out. These books, however, are not ranked, okay? That is not book 10 to 4, no, 10 to 6. Maths is hard. Those are not books 10 to 6, these are not the top 5. This is in order of when I read them and nothing else. I might do a little bit of a short list, may even pick a favorite, but I don't want to put that pressure on myself. And at this point in time, all I want to do is share with you guys some really great books that I read this year, okay? It's not a competition. These are just the standouts. So if you haven't watched part 1, go and do that and then come back here and jump right in because we are kicking things off with my 6th book of the top 10. And it is Old Enough by Haley Jakobson. This book follows Savannah, a young woman who has just come out as queer. She is sort of finding herself within her new friendship group at college. She's partway through her sophomore year, and she's beginning to learn a lot about herself and her experiences and the world around her through the gender studies class that she has recently enrolled in. This book is an absolute bisexual banger. It is another book that had me laughing out loud multiple times. It was so entertaining. It is uber current, very zeitgeisty, very contemporary, very of the moment. There are a lot of very niche current references, internet speak, internet queer culture, etc. It is so silly and giggly for these reasons, but it also is a beautiful ode to community and friendship, and it is built around a deeper theme of sexual assault survival. So I was really impressed by how enjoyable this book was to read, and also how sensitively it dealt with quite dark subject matter as well. Despite the heavier themes, I had a really good time reading this book. It was so entertaining. It was such a good time. I read it so fast, and I truly think that this belongs on everybody's summer reading list. This next book should come as absolutely no surprise to most of you. It is Madwoman by Chelsea Bieker. I have not been able to shut up about this book since I read it, and I didn't read it that long ago, so I kind of still can't shut up about it. This is a brilliantly captivating story about the realities and the lasting impacts of family violence. It is brutally nuanced and deeply entertaining. It follows a woman who has crafted a pretty perfect looking life for herself, real white picket fence type stuff. But that's all been an effort to distance herself from her dark past. A past which has just appeared in her mailbox in the form of a letter. And so she begins to unravel as she tries desperately to keep the truth buried. This book is devastating and hilarious all at once. It had me so hooked from the first page. It was truly something special. I didn't really have any expectations at all going into this book. I hadn't heard anything about it. I actually forgot that the author had offered to send it to me. And when the publisher emailed me to confirm that they were sending me a copy, I was like, no, I never asked for that. I don't know what that is. No thanks. legs, actually. No, I think there's been a mix-up. And then I remembered and had to like go back to the publisher, tail between my legs, and say, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, I remember what that was now, and I would actually really like a copy. Thank you. And I am so glad that I ended up getting my hands on this book. I was so engrossed in the story. I can't say it enough times. This is why I keep raving about it. I honestly think that this book is such a feat in terms of writing, in terms of storytelling, for such dark subject matter, told so truthfully and compassionately, and undoubtedly from the author's personal experience. It's incredible that it also manages to be so entertaining and funny and absurd. I actually can't express how much I loved this book. And there is even a twist in it that I did not see coming. Next is a book that was one of my most anticipated releases of 2024. I had absolutely no doubt that this book was going to be top-notch, high-quality reading, and yeah, I was not wrong. It's Little Rot by Akwaeke Emezi, and this is a very dark book. I don't think I realized just how dark and disturbing this was going to be. It revolves around a sort of web of interconnected characters in the underbelly of the city of New Lagos in Nigeria, and some pretty horrible stuff happens. But it's also very sexy and smutty. We have Kalu and Ama, who have just broken up, and Kalu drops Ama off at the airport, but she doesn't get on her flight. And then that night, Kalu goes to a sex party hosted by one of his old friends, and he sees some really disturbing stuff that kind of turns his whole world around and shakes up the night. Elsewhere, we have Ola and Soraya, who have just landed in the city, and they're ready for like a luxurious night of pleasure. Little do they know that their night is about to be rocked as well. All of these people are gonna become connected in some way, and their lives are gonna be changed on this night, on this weekend, and they do not know what is coming for them. Now, we all know that Akwaeke is an insanely talented author. This is the third book of theirs that I have read, and I actually can't quite decide if I like Little Rot just as much as You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, or more. They're such different stories that it is so difficult to compare them, but they're also like just as tense and just as smutty as each other. This book is disturbing and complex and sexy and fast-paced and thrilling. I wrote a full review for the Shameless Book Club. It's on their Instagram if you want to go and read it. I think I've said everything. Surely I have sold you on this book. If you haven't read any Akwaeke Emezi yet, you absolutely should. They have such range when it comes to storytelling as well. The 3 books that I have read from them have been so different. They also write YA. There is something out there for you by Akwaeke Emezi, and you need to go and read it because they are such a gifted author. This next book almost didn't make it into my top 10. I was tossing up between a few books when it came to picking the last nomination, and it was almost something else, but this is what I landed on. And now that I've sat with it and written out my thoughts, I have absolutely no regrets, and I'm so sure that it belongs in this top 10 list. It is Perfume and Pain by Anna Dorn. Perfume and Pain is a highly satirical, very edgy novel about Astrid Dahl, who is an LA-based lesbian author who has recently been cancelled. She has just rejoined the Sapphic Writers group that she co-founded, and in that group she has met a quite intoxicating young woman by the name of Ivy, who she pretty much immediately starts flirting with. Astrid has also been spending time with the famous actress who is adapting Astrid's book into a movie. The actress is really angling to play the main character in the book, which may or may not be based on Astrid. And this is where we get quite meta, and I'm going to discuss this later. But anyways, she's hanging out with this actress, this celebrity, they're getting papped together. And then also Astrid is trying to avoid her annoying new neighbor, Penelope. And all of this is going on while Astrid is on a bit of a downward spiral of substance abuse. Now, first of all, what I found very interesting about this book that I was sort of picking up on as I was reading it more and more, and then when I went and researched the book and the author, Anna Dorn, afterwards, realized was very much, in fact, the case, was that Astrid Dahl shares a lot of biographical, let's say, details with her creator, Anna Dorn, and not just their initials. They have had the same career trajectory very specifically. They base the characters in their novels on themselves. That can get complicated. All these little things that I was kind of picking up on that I was like, this is starting to feel like autofiction, which made reading this book a little bit conflicting because of how cringeworthy Astrid Dahl is as a character. I spent pretty much the entirety of the novel trying to figure out how I actually felt about it and about its author. I couldn't figure out if it was completely self-aware or not at all, and a bit ironic and missing the mark. It really teetered this weird meta line of almost autofiction, almost self-awareness, kind of irony. It was very confusing as a reader, and I really couldn't figure out how I felt about this book until I finished it, had gone on the full journey with the protagonist, gotten to know her, stuck with her, and come out the end of it, reflected on the book, and realized I really had a good time. I really enjoyed the ride. And despite Astrid's many bad traits, I found I really liked her. She's a 35-year-old single gay woman who is also an addict and really doesn't have a proper support network around her. She lives in LA. She's a creative, for God's sake. But she's trying her best, you know? And as a reader, I couldn't help but root for her and stick with her. Plus, this story is just undeniably entertaining to read. Yes, it's cringe, but it's also, you know, it's messy and it's funny and it's got a really great love triangle dynamic as well. I think that this book is worth sticking with. I think at the start, yes, there's a little bit, oh dear, oh no, is this hitting? Is this working? Or is this not quite right? But you stick with it and you get the tone, you get the satire, and you get used to it and you fall in love with the characters and you enjoy the ride. And I even just love how much this book made me think about it and reflect on it and how conflicting I did find it. I like that about it. Thank you for making me reflect. All right, guys, before I tell you what the final pick for my top 10 fiction reads of 2024 is, I just want to take this opportunity to urge you to leave a 5-star rating or a positive written review on whatever platform you are watching or listening to this on. You know the impact it has. You know that it helps me out. If you have a moment to spare and do that, I thank you eternally. And the last book in my top 10, of course, is the most recent book that I've read, because that's how we've ordered this list, and literally is the last book that I finished. And that is The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. And I'm sorry if that's not how you pronounce that name. Set in the 60s in Amsterdam, we are 15 odd years out from the Second World War. This is the landscape the story is set in. And we're following a very stern young woman named Isabel, who is holding on very tightly to the house that she grew up in, the house that her mother died in. And she lives here alone, but she is convinced that objects are going missing from the house. When her brother's girlfriend, Eva, comes to stay for a month, Isabel loathes her immediately. She treats her with the same disdain that she treats her housekeeper. But over the weeks that Eva stays, tensions rise to boiling point, and the two women will keep and reveal secrets that will change each other forever. I really don't want to give any more away about the plot of this book. I know that more is out there, and if I say more, I won't be spoiling it, but I think this was such a special story that going into it with as little expectations as possible is actually a really wonderful experience. This book was actually thrust upon me by one of my colleagues who has not been able to stop talking about it since she read it. I assume it is probably her favorite read of the year. She's been recommending it to everyone, and she gave it to me, and I thought it sounded fine. I knew it was queer, so I was interested, but honestly, I didn't think I would be that into this book. The blurb says something about it being post-war, and the word war in a synopsis of a book will always turn me off. I don't know why. It's a vibe thing. I'm just never into it. I don't do historical fiction. I feel like the word war is like, oh, this is a depressing historical fiction. Not interested. So, I didn't have the highest of hopes. I read this book in 2 days, which for any other regular person who reads at a normal speed would be like reading it in 1 day. I was completely immersed, engrossed, invested in this book. It's psychological, it is tense as hell, it's dramatic and sexy, and the more you read, the more questions you have, and the more you want to know, and the more you want to see and read and just be there and feel it. It's so steamy and so incredibly written. No wonder this was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It was really just such a beautifully written story, and I'm so glad that I found it in my hands, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful because it is a reminder for me to be more open with the kinds of stories that I reach for and really diversify my shelf, which is a much bigger issue that I need to work on that we will discuss another time. The Safekeep, 10 out of 10. Goodness, I am so sorry about the shifting lighting. I imagine it is so much darker right now than it was at the start of this video, is because the storms are rolling in and my reliance on natural light is starting to prove itself as not the best choice. But here we are. I'm just going to hope that most of you have been listening and not watching to this video. But that's it. That is my top 10 fiction reads of 2024. Of course, there's still another month of 2024 to go. I may still read the best book of the year in the coming weeks. Who knows? I don't know, but such is life. And I'll tell you about it if that happens. But for now, I wanted to share with you what a year it's been. I have to admit, it's not as if I had a list of 15, 20 incredible books that I'd read that I had to narrow down to 10. I actually pretty easily picked 8 or 9 and was trying to kind of figure out what else I could add to the list. And I think that's reflective of my year in reading. And the most interesting thing as I was scrolling through all of the books that I have read this year is that a lot of books I've enjoyed and now forgotten I ever read. Books like Briefly a Delicious Life, White on White. These are books that I know I enjoyed and finished and then said positive things about, but I had completely forgotten I had read them at all. And I find that really interesting, and I wonder what it is about two books that I can enjoy just as much as each other, but one really sticks with me, and the other I forget completely. Oh my gosh. Okay, there's now thunder. I'm going to stop recording because this is ridiculous. Thank you so much for watching part 2 of my top 10 reads. I am going to do my 5 best nonfiction reads, so stay tuned for that one. I also need to do my November reading wrap up. There's a lot going on. It's the end of the year. It's silly season. It is crazy times, but here we are. I will see you next week for whatever video that may be. Happy December. Happy summer if you're Australian. Goodbye. Love ya.